So we're back again in the Knocksink Wood Nature Reserve. Now we've come along today during the week, and that was on purpose. We've decided to come along when it's a little bit quieter, because areas like this can come under a lot of pressure if a lot of people converge at once. So spreading out your visits and coming when it's a little bit quieter actually also really helps these areas as well. So we're hoping to do a little bit of work today, a little bit of litter picking, a little bit of removal of graffiti, and some dismantling of campfires and shelters as well, those beacon impacts. So a plant that we might actually recognise by smell before we see it is the ramsons. And ramsons is another name we have for one of the plants that we call wild garlic. We'll often associate things like wild garlic with foraging, so using it in our cooking or making something like pesto. Wild foraging is an incredibly rewarding experience and something that is quite enjoyable. We need to be very careful about where we do it. If we're in an area such as this, like Knocksink, which is a nature reserve and a special area conservation, it's not really a great place to go foraging because everything here is protected and really should be left for nature. So something you'll probably notice if you visit Knocksink is that the vines and ivy on all the trees have been cut, like you can see here. Now this is an impact caused by a visitor who probably believed they were doing the right thing, so we're very good natured, removing the ivy, removing the wood vines to help the tree survive and protect it from being damaged from these plants. We associate ivy with being quite dangerous for trees and quite destructive, but and although that can be the case, it's often not. They are incredibly important habitats, they're really important for biodiversity, and it's really important that we think about these kind of actions before we ever consider doing them, because they can have a much bigger negative impact than we would intend or realize. So quite often you might come across something like graffiti on trees, and it can be a little bit difficult to think how to remove it without doing damage to the tree, because graffiti, once it gets on something, is notoriously difficult to get off. But there is a quite handy little trick in order to remove this beacon impact, which could attract more graffiti without actually doing any damage to the tree. And it's very simple. All you need is a couple of things. A little container, and I've put in a little bit of vegetable oil into the container, and I have a little bit of steel wool as well. And all you do is you dab a little bit of the oil on it, and I'm going to gently scour away at the graffiti for a couple of minutes. You don't want to rub so hard that you damage the bark, because they are surprisingly sensitive trees, but just lightly but firmly scrubbing, and the graffiti will slowly come away, and you'll be left with a small patch of oil at the end, but this will dissipate in time and leave no lasting damage to the tree. So after a good 5 minutes or so of gently scrubbing away, you'll notice that a big chunk of the graffiti on this section has been removed. Now there's still little tiny bits, a little bit more scrubbing will take them away, and there's still another section here that another 5 or 10 minutes will take away. But yeah, it really is an easy, quite environmentally friendly way of removing stuff like graffiti from trees. So one of the reasons why areas are designated nature reserves and special areas of conservation is because of the habitats that are found there, as well as some of the rare species that you'll get in those habitats. Now, some of them are quite hard to find depending on the time of year, but if you come at the right time of year, you can actually stumble across some really beautiful and rare species. So in amongst the wild garlic, the ramsons here, you'll see little yellow flowers, and these are yellow archangels. And these are quite a rare plant that you don't get too often around Ireland, but are an incredibly popular source of food for bees and other animals that rely on them. Thanks for joining us at the Knocksink Wood Nature Reserve. Hopefully you can take some of the tips that we went through today, along with some of the principles of leave no trace, in your next visit here to have a really enjoyable and responsible visit.